Recently, U.S. President Donald Trump has designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Now, as I think most people know, there is no such thing as Antifa. It stands for anti-fascist. There's no organization. Nevertheless, Trump has designated it as a terrorist organization. I'm going to talk to Michael Montgomery. He's a political scientist and former U.S. diplomat. He teaches at the University of Michigan-Dearborn and Wayne State University in Detroit. Welcome to the interview, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is fascinating. What is okay? Let's talk about Antifa to begin with, because there seems to be this misconception in certain parts of the political world that this is actually an organization, but it's really an idea, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is an idea. And this designation of an organization that doesn't exist as a terrorist or as a domestic terrorist organization is legally meaningless. But that's not in the sense that no one will be able to successfully sustain court cases based on this accusation. The problem is you don't have to sustain a court case in order to exact a terrible penalty on people, just in terms of the time and expense they incur defending against any accusation, whether it has merit or not.
Yeah, this is a point that you've made, is that they could be arrested, I suppose, but even if they're charged and go to court, the government or the prosecution will lose because I guess explain exactly why that would be the case.
Well, first, the president has no authority to designate domestic organizations as terrorist. So that even if Antifa existed as an organization, he couldn't designate it as a terrorist organization. So mere membership, which I don't know how you'd ever prove in something that doesn't exist, cannot ever be in and of itself be a crime. Now, there have been groups and individuals that have organized anti-fascist protests, and if they misbehave, if they attack people or damage property during those things, that is no more and no less illegal as a result of this presidential declaration than it was before.
Okay, like I understand that if there's a protest and shop windows are broken and shops are looted and so on, there are already laws that govern that behavior, penalize that behavior, so
Yes.
they can be charged. But if they have an anti-fascist rally or protest and none of that takes place, it's very peaceful, would this designation be used by police or other authorities to harass the protesters?
It won't be used by local authorities because it would be a federal matter. The various federal police agencies work for Trump and Trump's appointees, so they might actually arrest people, but I don't see how they could even get people indicted, let alone to trial on this. Just because there's no law for them to work with.
That doesn't seem to inhibit the president all that much, and the ICE controversy would seem to back that up, where ICE agents have taken American citizens. Apparently there are 150 Canadian citizens right now who are have been arrested by ICE and are in custody for no discernible reason. So would that suggest that maybe he could do the same sort of thing that he's doing with ICE?
He could. I think he could. And I'm a political scientist, and there's a whole body of literature that developed around the lower criminal courts many years ago. And this actually is highly relevant. And that is, what was the point in charging people with minor offenses if the cases get pled out or dismissed? Well, a scholar named Malcolm Feely developed the notion that sometimes The process is the punishment. And I think the Trump administration is in an excellent position to punish people and organizations through the process of apprehending them, incarcerating them, bringing them before a judge several days later, and even if the case is dismissed at that point, they've already suffered a pretty substantial punishment, and there's no way to really recoup that.
Now, I've
Now,
talked right.
mhm.
I've talked to other academics in the United States about this, and the message I get is that Trump is becoming deeply, deeply unpopular, and so there's a sense that there's going to be some pushback. We're already seeing the No Kings rallies, that sort of thing. Will that make any kind of a difference? That people are going to be taking to the streets, they're going to be protesting his policies and decisions, and might this be, aimed at those protesters?
Well, this is clearly aimed at deterring protests and having a chilling effect on speech. There's no question of that. There's also little evidence to suggest it's having much influence on those things. But I don't know if in Canada you've gotten much coverage of the sandwich case in Washington, D.C. A former Justice Department employee threw a submarine sandwich at an ICE officer, was arrested, successfully indicted, and then charged, brought to trial, and acquitted. It's taken a month out of that man's life. It's disrupted his livelihood. He's a former Justice Department employee now, and they're gonna try. He's now got a target on his back. They're going to try to find some other charge. So yeah, if people allow themselves to be deterred, there's pretty significant deterrence to import to what the administration is doing. That's certainly their intention. But, and here's a key thought. The whole MAGA movement is rooted in the notion that they are somehow the victims. That the world has become terribly unsafe. America's become terribly unsafe. It's become inhospitable to people like them. The fact that the guy with the sandwich was acquitted will further inflame MAGA follower enthusiasm for what Trump is doing. He doesn't need to actually offer cases with merit or win those cases in order to fire up and maintain the support of his most fundamental supporters. And so, yeah, this kind of crazy stuff's gonna continue.
Well, speaking of crazy stuff, one of the things that Trump has done that's very controversial is he's moved National Guard troops into other states. There's been talk of, I can't remember if he actually deployed regular army troops into, but there's certainly talk of it. Did he do that?
Yeah, there were some regulars on the streets in DC.
Okay, so he has already done that. And it would seem like that the designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization would play right into that strategy, because how are you going to counter them? Well, bring in the military, bring in the National Guard. Is that a reasonable inference here?
Well, I think it's a reasonable inference about their intentions. It doesn't Because they have no legal authority to designate a domestic terrorist organization, it doesn't make the use of the Guard in this way any more legal than it was before the designation.
Right. But then it doesn't seem like legality is something that holds back Trump when he decides to do something.
No, it absolutely does not. It absolutely does not hold him back, so long as the Republican majority in both houses of Congress are prepared to let him run amok. they could, I think there's arguably a case for invoking the Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, which is the removal of a president because of disability. But that then requires a majority vote in Congress, and they're not going to do that. Just like Republicans protected him in the previous term with two impeachments. They simply are so beholden, if not to Trump himself, to his supporters, that they absolutely, for political reasons, will not move on him. And what that means is there's no effective control except for the restraint he chooses to exercise, and he's not exercising much restraint. I mean, that's what we saw in the teardown of the East Wing of the White House to build his ballroom. Previous presidents went through a normal building process for changes to the White House because they honored the same laws everyone else was expected to honor, irrespective of the fact that they didn't really apply to them, and their compliance was entirely voluntary. He chooses not to voluntarily comply with anything and must be forced at every step.
A couple months ago, I interviewed Professor Kristen van de Biesenbos, who's a California legal scholar, and we were talking about this. Will as she put it, the guardrails of the Constitution contain Trump? And it seems like one of his strategies for not being contained is to move quickly. Whatever he's going to do, if he's going to, build a ballroom on the east instead of tear down the East Wing and then build a ballroom, whether he's going to deploy, he does it so quickly that the process can't keep up to him. And by the time it gets to court, it's already done. It's a fait accompli. Is that kind of his MO here?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. The political scientists call that driving a stake. Driving a stake to predispose the outcome you want. I think we're probably working our way up to see whether we're going to be in a profound constitutional crisis as a result. At some point, the Supreme Court is going to make some decision that fundamentally he disagrees with. Will he comply? I don't know. So far, he's kind of sort of complied with the final orders of the final courts, but he's an angry guy surrounded by angry people feeding his anger. There aren't the grown-ups present like there were in the first Trump administration. People with some real credentials in government, some real experience in real time, including the various generals. Those guys are gone. Those women are gone. And this is like the third team of MAGA America, the kind of the worst, most base level Trump flunkies are now peopling this administration. And they're not gonna, I think they're not inclined to try to maintain the guardrails of democracy. And even if they were, I don't think they're necessarily capable of doing it effectively.
Michael, let's end the interview like this. I'm going to ask you to polish your crystal ball. You talked about the United States may have a constitutional crisis. So look out over the next 6 to 12 months, and what do you think? Take a good guess at what might transpire.
I think over the next 6 months, what you're going to see is a resurgent Democratic Party. The Democrats on the partisan offices in the most recent election, and progressives in the nonpartisan races, pretty much ran the table. And I think that's going to make the normal surge and decline. The party in power loses seats at the midterm election. It's one of these. It's almost like gravity in American politics. I think the results of the special elections and the most recent elections, the odd year elections, suggest that the surge was is the decline's going to be precipitous, and it'll probably be a loss of control in the House, in the Senate, and possibly the House as well. And what then happens, I don't know, because the Democrats won't have veto-proof majorities. So I think we're going to be continuing to look at fundamental confrontations within the American government and in American society, but with the Democrats having a much stronger hand than they do now. And right now, in the midst of the shutdown, their hand's pretty strong.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for this. Interesting insights into what's going on. And as I said earlier, it's not going away anytime soon. So I'm sure we'll be back to talk to you again. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed this.